Hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a video that I am so excited to be sharing with you guys because today I'm going to be sharing my top 10 favorite solo board games. Now, it's no secret that I love solo board games. I've made several videos about them on the channel, and it is a type of board game that is just near and dear to my heart. And I've never actually sat down to try to kind of quantify what my actual favorite one is. Well, my favorite one's probably pretty obvious, but the rest of them, it was a challenge to really rank them and kind of really think about which are my favorite and why they're my favorite. And it was a fun exercise, and I'm excited to share this with you guys. And so hopefully you get something out of this list. Maybe you hear about a new game, and maybe you could share some recommendations at the end of it if there was something that was missing. Now, before we get into the top 10, there is a few games that I need to play a little bit more before they were able to make it on this list. Think of these as honorable mentions, I guess. And the first honorable mention is a big one, and that's going to be Spirit Island. Now, I have played, and I do have Spirit Island, or Horizons of Spirit Island, which is kind of the smaller box Target version of the game. That's kind of like a beginner's guide to Spirit Island. And I have enjoyed my plays of that, but I feel like I really got to play the full game and maybe some of the expansion spirits to really get the full feel of the game. The next one that is an honorable mention is Legacy of You. This is a pretty popular game over the last year, and this is another game where I've played about half of the kind of campaign that's in this game. Really liking it so far, but I think I want to finish the campaign and maybe play another one and see kind of is able to kind of hold up over time. If it's going to be fun to play kind of as standalone games, or if it will kind of get repetitive having to play through the whole kind of campaign that it has. But what I've played so far, I do really enjoy it. Now, the next honorable mention, I actually have it right in front of me here because I was just playing it yesterday, is Kinfire Delve. Now, Kinfire Delve is a newer game where it is a kind of dungeon crawler that is driven by cards and dice rolling, and you'll have your character deck and you're going up against a boss. And it's really neat because the actual dungeon that you're going through is the deck of cards, right? There's a lot of different effects here that will let you discard cards from the deck, and as you go deeper into the deck, you're also going deeper into the dungeon. Really, really neat concept here. It is super smooth to play, really interesting kind of card play, dice rolling mechanic, and it is also a very modular game. So I think I have here the first set of this, and I think there's been 2 that have been released so far. I really enjoy this first set, but I would like to do some of the mix and matching and do some stress testing to see how this entire system plays nicely together before I kind of give it a firm kind of rating on myself of how much I like it. But this kind of Vainglory's Grotto, this kind of first set here, is really enjoyable. Really suggest it for solo and cooperative play. Really great stuff here. Now, the last honorable mention is Black Sonata. Now, this is a solo hidden movement game, and just the concept of that alone is enough to catch my interest, and I've only played it twice, so again, one of those games, I gotta play it a couple more times. I do like it. It is, it's a very special game, I feel like. I'm not sure if I love it, but I would like to play it a little bit more because it is such an interesting concept. So if you get a chance to try it, I really would suggest it. The way they adapt the hidden movement in a solo game is really interesting. And again, one I just got to play a little bit more before I kind of solidify my feelings on it. Now that we're done with those honorable mentions, let's go ahead and get into the list with number 10. So starting off the list at number 10 is Cartographers. Now, Cartographers is a flip and write game where you are going to be playing the role of a cartographer, mapping out this fantasy landscape, where every turn you're going to be flipping over cards, and they are going to have different shapes with different types of terrain on them. You're going to be placing these different shapes and terrains on your map to fulfill scoring conditions that are dealt out at the start of the game. Now, the reason I like this specifically in a solo mode is that you are drawing out this map and you're able to draw these landscapes as simply or as complex as you would like. And when you're playing it alone and you're not worried about, turns or anyone, holding up anybody, I find that it's like a really relaxing game to play. You can get like markers or colored pencils or something and kind of just have fun sketching out the different landscapes and really feel like you're making your own map in this game. I do think that the kind of monster system in this, where if you flip over a monster card, normally you would give it to your opponent in a multiplayer game, and in this solo mode, you just kind of put it in one of the corners and you kind of like go around the map. It kind of negates the monster tension quite a bit, but I think of this more as more of kind of like a relaxing, fun, just try to get a high score game. But the actual kind of map you're left with is more of a reward than the actual score you're getting. And if you're enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more board game content. I do a lot of playthrough videos and reviews and previews and lists and all sorts of stuff, solo game and otherwise. So if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please consider joining the channel. Now back to my 100% objective correct list of the 10 best solo board games. Now for number 9 is the game that actually inspired me to make this list in the first place, and that is going to be Dieson Crusoe. Now when I was recording the review for that, I think I said something along the lines of, hey, this is one of my favorite solo board games, and I almost hesitated at saying that because I've never really formally thought about what are my 10 favorite board games. Is this really on the list? And I was pleased to see that after kind of ranking them all out, this did show up on the list. Now, if you want to see more about this game, check out my review on it, but quick summary is that it is a dice placement game where you're going around this rondel and trying to survive on this island in this very Robinson Crusoe-esque game. It is a lot of dice placement, it is survival, it has a lot of just things that I really enjoy. I love dice placement as a mechanic, and this is just a nice, snappy solo game. I like the VHS case that it comes in, and highly recommend checking this one out if you're a fan of survival or kind of small form games. It really hits the spot. But again, go watch my review if you want to see more about it. Number 8 is the first of 2 games on this list about World War II resistance groups. Weird to say this early on, but this one is Resist. In Resist, you're going to be taking the role of Spanish freedom fighters going up against this occupation force, and you're going to be controlling your own little group of freedom fighters and trying to complete missions to defeat the opposition. This is a very tense game where you're going to be drafting at the start of your kind of setup the different agents that you want. So each of these different cards are going to have a hidden and a revealed side, and these are going to be the cards that you're playing to actually send out on these missions. And it is just a very tense game. Completing these missions can be incredibly difficult, and when you put these agents out, you can either put them on their hidden side where they're a little bit weaker but they are going to be shuffled back into your deck later, or you can play them for their revealed value. And when they're revealed, they're going to be much stronger, but they're going to be discarded at the end of that mission, right? You're kind of having to choose if you want to keep your people and kind of cycle them through, and when is the right time to reveal them and try to complete a critical mission. This is like an incredibly difficult game. I haven't made it through all the scenarios. It is a really tough one, but there's something about drafting this set of characters at the start of the game where it feels like you're recruiting them and you're kind of building up your own little deck, and you almost get this weird connection with the cards that you have in your deck, and you're like, okay, if Celia comes out, I'm gonna be so ready for this mission. But on top of that, you're also managing spies that are going to be getting into your deck and gunking up your hand. You have to deal with civilian casualties. It is a pretty intense game. I will say that I have another spin-off of this game called Witchcraft coming soon, and that is a theme I'm really excited about. That kind of witch trial kind of theming, a little spooky. It's something that really is up my alley, as you'll see as we move up this list. I like spooky things, and so I'm excited to see what Witchcraft is, and I could easily see this moving up. I love Resist, and I'm excited to see kind of what Witchcraft changes while keeping that core design that I'm really enjoying. Number 7 is a game that is just 18 cards, and if you've watched anything on this channel, you can probably guess who this is coming from. This is a button shy game, and this is going to be Naturapolis. Now, I probably could have filled this entire list with solo button shy games, but I think Naturapolis is still my overall favorite. It changes day to day, but I really enjoy Naturapolis. This is in their Sprawlopolis line of games. This specific theming and the different features in this one are kind of my favorite, but this is a game where you're going to be laying out your cards to build your own little kind of nature landscape while you're also trying to fulfill these different scoring conditions. The reason I like Naturapolis a little bit more than the others is that I find that it's the most forgiving, and I just kind of like the nature-y vibe to it. It's just the one I find myself reaching out the most to. I probably could have filled this entire list with nothing but button shy games, but if you haven't played any, check out Naturapolis or any of the Opolis games. They are a great place to start. Now, for number 6 is probably a game that is the polar opposite of an 18-card compact button shy game, and that is going to be Plum Island Horror. Now, Plum Island Horror is kind of an odd game that I was surprised that I enjoyed so much. It is coming from GMT, who is primarily known for publishing war games, and the actual mechanics of it are kind of a riff on something called States of Siege, which are kind of a design structure that games are made around where you're trying to kind of defend a position against an oncoming force. Now, normally if that was in military terms, I wouldn't find it as kind of attractive or eye-catching, but when you put this kind of pulpy 1950s creepshow-esque vibe to it, it really catches my attention. In Plum Island Horror, you're going to be taking the role of a faction on Plum Island. It could be the police force, it could be the municipality, it could be the, like Boy Scouts, it could be like the local sports team. It is such a goofy game, but trying to defend Plum Island against these oncoming zombies and different monsters is just so much fun. It is a pretty clunky, kind of fiddly game. There's tons of chits. I've never played this style of kind of war game. It uses a lot of language that was kind of difficult on my first playthrough to really pick up on. Once I kind of got my feet under me, I do find that it plays pretty smoothly, but that initial learn was really challenging for me. But I'm glad I pushed through it because it has become one of my favorite solo board games, obviously. And the actual thematic, immersive nature of this game, it is a really funny game. The different events and the kind of tongue-in-cheek attitude that it has is tons and tons of fun. And if you're a fan of zombie survival, of kind of like pulpy, kind of cheesy stuff, I think it's definitely worth checking out. And Herman Luttman's other game, Dawn of the Zeds, is one that I'm really trying to get played soon because I really love Plum Island Horror, and I would love to see kind of the game that he's, I guess, most famous for. It's kind of in the pantheon of solo board games with Dawn of the Zeds. So Plum Island Horror was a game that was a little bit of a gamble for me to kind of get in on, but I'm really glad I did because I really fell in love with it. And it's kind of honestly turned me on to war games as a whole and kind of shown me that there's a lot more to this kind of war game world than just kind of, in my mind, kind of boring military simulations. There's a lot of interesting designers and interesting stuff being done in that space. So I also thank Plum Island Horror for that. Now, at number 5, we are going to have our second game about World War II resistance fighters, and this is going to be Maquis. Now, Maquis is a solo worker placement game where you're going to be controlling a group of French resistance fighters, sending them out into the city to collect different resources and to complete missions to push the occupying force out of France. And the way that they take worker placement and kind of adapt it to solo play is just so interesting to me, and really just makes this game shine. Because to actually complete these missions, you have to send your workers out into the city. But at the end of a round, you also have to add different guards and patrols along different areas of the city. And you have to be able to guide your Maquis back to home base for it to actually complete what it was doing. And so if you send your worker too far out into the city and there's no clear path back, they get captured and you lose one of your workers. And so these different patrolling guards always has this like layer of tension depending on where you go on the map. There's ways to mitigate it where you can get weapons, but if you kill a guard, it's going to escalate their kind of alertness, and then you're going to have to deal with more guards later in the game. It has a number of different missions, and it's really modular with kind of the difficulty and how you want to kind of set it, but just taking that worker placement, which is one of my favorite mechanics, and adapting it to solo game is awesome. I love this theming, and it is just a super solid game. So if you're a fan of worker placement, I really suggest checking out Maquis, really one of my favorites. Now, number 4 is a game that would probably rank higher if I was just kind of laying out my general favorite board games, but for solo play, it's a little bit lower down the list, and that is going to be Arkham Horror, the card game. This is a game I've gushed about and talked about on past videos, but this is just almost the perfect game for me. It has that kind of creepy Lovecraftian theme. It has this kind of modular deck building that almost feels RPG-esque, where you're able to kind of grow your deck into a bunch of different paths depending on what character you're playing as. It has some great narrative moments. It has great emergent narrative, and I just really love it. The only reason it's at number 4 and not probably number 1 or 2 is that I do like playing it multiplayer more than I do solo. Misery loves company, and when this game gets tough, it is just so much fun to be playing it with a friend or friends and sharing in that story, sharing in this kind of narrative that's going on is just really special. And while I do love the mechanics and playing it alone and kind of tenseness, playing it together is just a little bit more fun for me. But as a solo game, it is really strong. And I will put the little caveat where this is a game where you're going to essentially be playing 2 characters. The true solo version in this game is a little busted, so this is a game where you're going to be controlling 2 characters. Not terribly difficult, but being able to kind of control both aspects of those characters and kind of the harmony and the cards that they use together is really fun. And that deck building when you're playing alone is quite a bit more engaging almost than playing it multiplayer. But Arkham Horror, the living card game, easily lives at this number 4 spot, and one of my favorite games multiplayer, and also one of my favorite games solo. So number 3 is another game that was recently featured on the channel, and that is going to be Sleeping Gods Primeval Peril. Now, Sleeping Gods is a narrative adventure game that just has some of the best storytelling and writing I think I've seen in any board game. I play a lot of games with different narratives and different kind of booklets and stories. Even Arkham Horror that I love, sometimes the writing in that can be really hit or miss sometimes. But everything in Sleeping Gods I always found to be super interesting, engaging, well written, immersive, imaginative, and just that entire world that it's letting you get a glimpse into is just fascinating. On top of that, the actual combat and exploration mechanics I really enjoyed. The kind of grid that you're trying to cover up different hearts and use different items and different character abilities, it really fired on all cylinders for me. Now, of course, Sleeping Gods Primeval Peril is a smaller box version of Sleeping Gods. At this point, I think I've exhausted all the different kind of narrative branching paths of Primeval Peril, but it has really primed me to want to go and play a full Sleeping Gods game. I can't even imagine the expansive nature of a full box Sleeping Gods game just based on what's on that little box and how much there is in it and how much kind of nooks and crannies there to explore. I am really excited to play a full box version. So I think Sleeping Gods Primeval Peril for me as my first Sleeping Gods game easily should be at this spot, but I'm so excited to see how much more this world has to offer. And if you're interested, check out my playthrough video of my first kind of go around with Sleeping Gods Primeval Peril. Now, number 2 might be the game that I'm surprised ended up ranked so highly, but when I really tried to critically think of what in a solo board game is important to me, what makes me love it and kind of draw me to want to play the game, it just had so much of that going for it, and that is going to be Under Falling Skies. Now, Under Falling Skies is a game where you're going to be controlling this like government base and trying to defeat this oncoming alien threat. It's a little bit of Space Invaders, it's a little bit of Independence Day, but the board game mechanic that drives it is going to be dice worker placement. And it's funny because if you take a little bit of Dieson Crusoe and you take a little bit of Maquis and kind of smush those mechanics together, you kind of get Under Falling Skies, which kind of makes sense why I love it so much. And you are trying to both defend this base. You have this kind of really long board. It has maybe the longest board that I've ever played with. And you have these kind of aliens coming down, descending on your base. And so you have to place these dice around the base to both kind of defend them using anti-air guns, but you also have to be researching the kind of ultimate way to get rid of this alien and also, win the game, which is, this game can be played both standalone and it also has a campaign mode that plays over a number of games. I honestly have only played through that campaign once. I tend to just want to kind of set it up as a one-off and just kind of start playing. But that actual kind of comic and story it tells is fun to go through the first time, and it's also a nice way to learn the game. But now that I've played through that, I really just love kind of setting it up, picking a city, picking a difficulty, and just going with it. And it is just such a solid game. I think just mechanically, it is just a game that I just cannot get enough of. I love dice worker placement. Having to make those tough decisions of what rooms you want to activate to actually survive into the next round is just always tense. Really solid game, both mechanically and thematically. So if you are a fan of dice worker placement, Under Falling Skies is phenomenal and really, really good. And obviously I love it because it's my number 2 here. Now, number 1 should be no surprise to anyone who has watched this channel before. It is a game that I unabashedly love. It is the game that I thank for helping getting any traction on this channel, and it is going to be Final Girl. This is a game I've made playthrough videos of, I've made buying guides, and I just love talking about this game, and I love this game so, so much. Now, Final Girl, I should probably tell you what it's about before I keep gushing about it, is a game where you're going to be playing as the titular final girl, right? That's that horror movie trope of the last surviving person in the horror movie. And you're going to be going up against the killer. Mechanically, Final Girl is driven by playing cards for actions and then rolling dice to see how successful those actions are. But the mechanics are only part of the reason that I love Final Girl so much. Really, the key word to this game and why I love it is emergent narrative. Now, this is a word you'll probably hear me throw around in videos every now and then, but it is that idea of a game having the ability to tell a story through the gameplay that you have. Because in Final Girl, you are going to be able to choose what Final Girl you want, what killer you want, and then what location that you want. And so this is an extremely modular game where once you have the core box, you can kind of mix and match any of the feature films that each have their own final girl, location, and killer. And so depending on what your favorite flavor of horror is, you can really find one that works well for you. But as you start to collect more of these, you're able to mix and match final girl, killer, and locations however the heck you want. And so those possibilities of telling these different stories with location events and killer powers and final girl backgrounds is honestly pretty much limitless. And the different events, the different results of these die rolls and how they kind of craft this story of the victims on the map and the final girl and her struggles to beat this killer, and how the killer can just be relentless. In some games, the killer will finish you off in like 4 turns, and other times you're down to 1 health and you're able to get that dramatic die roll to beat the killer. And every game is just this emergent thematic experience that is just always so much fun. It feels like every time I finish a game of Final Girl, it's like a story that I can go and tell someone, and it feels like this epic experience. And it is a game that I just love. It also helps that I am a huge horror fanatic, and so seeing the little references, this game is made with so much love towards horror movies and the kind of horror world, and the little winks and nods and cards and items and locations. It's just such a joy to play through. This is a game that honestly is like tailor-made for my specific niche interests. I love horror, I love board games, I love horror-themed board games, and this is just like the true epitome of all of those things clashing and telling this amazing story through really fun gameplay. I would suggest that you go check out the different playthroughs or maybe the buying guides that I did. That again, I thank those videos for really helping starting to get traction on this channel. When I made those videos and they did pretty well, it really kind of gave me the confidence of, hey, maybe people want to hear me talk about these different games that I like. So Final Girl is just a game that is near and dear to my heart. I love it, and hopefully you guys get a chance to try it because, again, some of the randomness, I'm not totally oblivious to some of the faults that it might have, but for me personally, that randomness, that dice rolling, again, just adds to that experience that the game builds, and I just truly love it. So there we have it. That is my top 10 best solo board games. Again, this was a really challenging list to make. There are tons of board games, solo games specifically, that I love, and so really trying to put them in a formal list was really challenging to do. But these are all games that I really enjoy playing. They are easily games that if I had a free night during the week, these are the games that I would kind of gravitate towards and look forward to playing. But there are tons of other games that I also love playing solo. So I hope you guys enjoyed this list. Please leave me a comment below if you think there is a game that you think that I would like and should check out based on what you've seen on this list. And let me know what's on your top 10 list. I would love to hear what ranks up there with your favorite solo game. Now, we'll put a quick asterisk that there are 2 games that were not on this list. Too Many Bones and Mage Knight. Those are games that I know are highly regarded in the solo world. I just have not had the opportunity to play them yet, and so who knows, maybe after the chance that I get to play them, they may end up on this list in some future iteration of it. Thank you again for watching and joining me on this list video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found a game that you hadn't heard of and are able to check it out. And remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you around the channel moving forward. Thank you again for watching. See you next time. Bye.